All right. You should be able to see my slides now. Is that correct?
Perfect. Yes, we can see that.
Excellent.
Yep.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Deb Berke. I am the director of the Center for Prevention Science at Wilmington University. And today I'm going to be talking about two different goals. See if I can move that up there. There we go. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about trauma, sensitive topics, and learning. And then I'm going to talk about some best practices for teaching sensitive content in an online environment. Now, why do I bring up the concept of trauma? Well, because sensitive topics, especially, can elicit feelings of trauma or toxic stress in individuals. We perceive that there's a threat, whether or not there is an actual threat, but we might perceive it. And when we perceive there's a threat, what we do is we go into what's called our survival brain, which is the mid to lower areas of our brain, and we are not no longer rational or able to process and absorb information. We go into that survival mode, that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop mode. And when we do that, obviously, learning can be really challenging. And so any topic could be a sensitive topic for an individual. It doesn't really matter what that topic is. If they've had an experience that has been negative for them, it might be a sensitive topic for them. In addition to topics that are traditionally sensitive, like conflict, war, disasters, rape, and abuse, those kinds of things. So, as educators, it's important for us to be aware of what happens with students and their brains as we talk about and teach different topics and how that impacts their learning, and then what we can do to make a difference and to help them be able to learn even when we're talking about sensitive topics. So typically, if students are experiencing trauma, if they perceive there's a threat, they might have one of these 5 trauma responses. And I would bet most of you have heard of the fight, flight, or freeze symptom responses. The fight, particularly in an online environment, might look at like that student who is challenging their grade, challenging your teaching, challenging other students. Flight might be that student who might disappear from your online class, or who may want to do whatever it is to get that A. They've got an A minus, for example, in the US, they may want to get an A. And so they're going to be trying to do that. Freeze in an online environment might, if you are meeting synchronously, like we are right at the moment, for example, might look like the person who has that blank look on their face, that they're not engaging. Fawn, the student who's looking perhaps for whatever they need to do to get that grade to pass the class. And then flop is when students just surrender. They just give in. They're not challenging. They've given up. They don't know what to do. They've just given up. So we may see any one of these responses from our students when we're talking about any topic, sensitive or not. So what do we do? There are some best practices that we can use when we want to teach sensitive topics in an online environment. They are the ones I'm going to talk about are based on the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's 6 principles of a trauma-informed approach. And in the graphic on the screen, you can see they include safety, trustworthiness, empowerment, collaboration, peer support, and history, gender, and culture. Each one of these can be an entire hour in and of itself, but what I'm going to do is hit a couple. I'm going to first talk about relationships, which cut across all 6 principles. Then I'm going to focus on empowerment, one specific principle, and then again give some kind of general tips that cut across all 6 again. So in that online environment, as we want to help learners learn, building relationships can help address issues of trauma, toxic stress, feelings of fight, flight, freeze. Checking in with our learners, establishing those connections, making those connections is really important, whether you're doing it, teaching a course that's asynchronous or synchronous, or a combination of the two. How can we check in with them? Do we do it verbally? Do we do it email? Do we do it meeting with them one-on-ones? How might we do that? Can we help our learners identify mentors and support systems that might assist them if they have any challenges in our courses? So do we have content in our syllabi or in our learning management system course setups that help students give them clues for support systems and that kind of thing? Do we express unconditional positive regard? Right now, I'm working with some doctoral students, and they're struggling to develop their research questions and do their human subjects or institutional review board applications. And I'm telling them it's new, it's challenging, but you got this. You can do it. Maintaining high expectations and consistency. The goal is not to drop our expectations, it's really to keep them and to keep them high. But if we do this unconditional positive regard, if we've got connections, then students can relate to us and can ask us questions and feel comfortable coming to us when they're feeling challenges. And then also checking our assumptions, observing a question. If we have a student that might disappear, reaching out to them and saying, hey, what's going on? We have, at my current institution, we've got some different supports put in place where I can refer students out to if they need perhaps tutoring or assistance with writing, or if they are challenged with stress. COVID, I know, has put, burdens on students. And so just giving them kind of a smorgasbord of, again, support systems and letting them choose and tell me what they may or may not need. Empowerment, one of the specific principles of a trauma-informed approach, is helping students, helping our learners grow their knowledge and skills. So teaching about growth mindset, that it's a learning process and you may not have it, but the key is yet. We weren't born knowing how to run. We had to learn how to crawl and learn how to walk, and then we had to learn how to run, and it was a process. Nobody's born knowing how to write. It's a learning process, so you just don't know it yet, but you will get there. Do we model our own self-regulation skills, and do we help our learners develop them? Again, even with my doctoral students, I talk about, stress management and self-care and coping skills, and we usually start out checking in with one another and talking about what we've done. We share pictures of our pets, for example, because that, engaging with animals helps calm and calm people, and so talking about pets also helps the students kind of laugh and engage with one another. Do we talk to students about healthy communication and problem-solving skills, and do we actually model those ourselves? So do we use iMessages? Do we talk about and break things down for them? Do we try and determine where in the process they might be having a challenge and how might they be able to resolve that challenge? Recognizing and acknowledging the strengths of our learners. Every learner has strengths. They may just not know what they are yet. And the Google presentation by the gentleman from Google reminded me, he talked about dyslexia. He has enough to be annoying, but not enough to be diagnosed. But that's given him strengths to be able to have sympathy for and to lost the English word, but to connect with others, to be able to be sympathetic to others in the learning challenges. And then as our instructors, do we even know what our own trauma and triggers are? Do we know what sensitive topics are, what topics are sensitive for us to teach about? And how does that impact how we teach them? Do we kind of tense up? Do we get anxious? Is that displayed in our voice? Or are we calm and relaxed and even keeled? And do we are we able to, again, do that self-regulation? Some other general tips include things like avoiding stereotyping, being even-handed with information provided. So especially if we're addressing historical, cultural, or gender issues, making sure that we use some instead of all. present all sides of a case, of an issue? Do we encourage understanding different points of view? And do we model that in ourselves? Do we talk about that? When I was learning, I knew this, but I didn't know that. But by learning that, it gave me a greater appreciation for life, so to speak. So do we encourage this, and do we actually model it too for our students? Preparing for us as instructors is really important. Now, obviously, there's no way we can know everything about everything, but if we prepared and are even-handed about the information, and we know some information about all sides of an issue, what we don't know, we simply say, you know what, that's a great question. I can research it and get back to you. Or if you're doing this synchronously or even asynchronously, you can encourage the students to look it up and to share resources and share information. And then if you get a chance to assess students' prior knowledge and experiences before addressing a sensitive topic, that could be really useful. So it could be done through an anonymous poll. It could be done through a discussion board. It could be done through group chat. It could be, there's lots of different ways you can do it, but that can also give you as an instructor kind of a pulse of what you might expect as you engage with your students with a topic. And then last but not least, can we help students make connections with previous material, or help them understand why it's important for them to know? How does it connect with them and their own lives? Being neutral it can be very valuable in the sense that we can indicate as instructors we don't lean towards one side or the other. We are not a pro or a con. There are valuable points on both sides of the case, and it's really important to examine an issue in its entirety and then make an educated decision. Sometimes taking a breath and rephrasing a question can help. It can help because, again, it's self-regulation, taking that breath, taking that moment, and then rephrasing models for the students. It can help lower the temperature in the classroom, so to speak, especially if you're engaging in a synchronous learning experience. Doing that as you're engaging in a lecture or engaging in interactions with students. And most importantly, any time something happens that could be hurtful or offensive, addressing it, acknowledging it, indicating that it's inappropriate in this context, and again, talking about why it's inappropriate, and modeling perhaps a better way of phrasing or a different way of asking that question, or trying to get at an understanding of what's behind that remark and what perhaps stereotypes or misinformation might that student have, and how can you provide knowledge and resources that can help that student and the other students in the class feel safe, feel heard, and feel cared about. So that is a quick overview of some ways of teaching material sensitively in an online learning environment, and I'm hoping we have a few moments for questions.
If anyone does have a question, would you be able to raise your hand, please? Thank you, Deborah. That was so interesting, and you could see from the engagement with everyone in the chat as well that it was, it was obviously a really relevant talk and really kind of resonated with lots of people, which is exactly what which is exactly what we want. Does anyone have a question for Deborah? I think lots of people just saying, well done, great.
Thank you. Here's my contact info.
Yeah.
And we can make the slides available too. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Deborah. I know you're really busy, and I think you're actually on leave today. Oh, Kelly. Kelly's just raised her hand. I'm sure we've got time to ask a question. If you just bear with me 1 second. Okay, Kelly, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, it was I might not have time for it. I was just asking if you had a bit more to say about the growth mindset. I have heard of it, but it's not something that pulls straight to mind again. But not right. Too long, obviously, because I think people, it's probably near the end, isn't it? Sorry.
No, the concept of the growth mindset is the fact that, again, we are not born knowing everything, and it's a learning process. And so when I talk to students about writing, we learn how to put noun and verb together. We learn how to construct a sentence, and there's different kinds of writing. And so it's all a growth way of learning. And somebody posted Carol Dweck in the chat, which is she's an excellent resource on this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anyone does have any more questions, then Debra shared her contact details, but you can also contact me and I can pass on any questions. But thank you again, Debra. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.